this is a relatively young red oak in Woodlot. And by George, there's Mr. Hickey. Hang on a sec.
Welcome back to the channel, folks. Today we're going to talk about what decisions I go through in terms of deciding what trees to cut and what trees to keep. So in order for you to do this, you have to know your woodlot very well. What trees are rare, what trees are common, plentiful, over plentiful, and then you can start to make decisions. For us, it's not too hard. Hemlock, no mature hemlock. Sugar maple, no mature sugar maple. Beech, we have a sapling 25 foot tall. Red oak, we have 3 mature trees. So a couple of years ago, when I discovered this tree and he was being competed with, there was no question none of the competitors were hemlock, sugar maple, beech. Right? So
he was at the top of the priority heap.
Right. So I think there was a white spruce here that got cut. There's a white ash just out here a bit that got cut. Over here, this is I think a fir. And then there was a large white ash here that was with a very broad crown that was pushing this tree to grow outward.
So much as we like ash, he had to go.
So it's important that you know what are your priority trees, especially if you're looking for diversity. If I had 1 or a dozen trees of any species, to my mind they would be a do not cut. You're not accomplishing anything unless it's invasive or something like that. But by and large, you know, so you also should know and understand what trees are the best for coming, well, no, it's here, climate change. I think there are some really clear things. Red maple will proliferate. That means do really, really well.
In our area, at least, yes.
Yes, this is for New Brunswick. And in fact, one estimate from the, it was the Midway, it's a forestry group in Nova Scotia. Their projections were that the red maple will triple its significance within the Acadian forest, from around 10% to just over 30%. Balsam fir is going to do poorly.
That doesn't mean we want to keep them, though.
No.
We had too many to begin with.
Yes. So we want to cut balsam fir to leave room for other more desirable species. And of course, in most of the areas where we've been cutting, we certainly are getting fir and red maple regeneration. Where we cut around some of the mature oaks, we're certainly getting red oak regeneration there. But that's the first thing that I always look for, and it's the easiest decision making to my mind. You find a desirable tree, and if it needs room in order to grow better, become stronger, more vibrant, then you cut those trees around it and
give them some space.
And the question is pretty simple.
Well, and you do sometimes have to be careful so you don't end up with a Mr. Bendy.
Well, yes, that's not the, yes, it's...
So not to take out necessarily everything.
But still, Mr. Bendy, we're going to have a seed tree out of him.
Let's hope.
For sure we are. I have confidence. So in this area, I'm kind of surrounded by white ash, a bit of red maple. So this yellow birch was freed up simply because he's not red maple and white ash. In other words, he adds diversity to this part of the stand, to the forest, and that's what we're trying to do, is diversify on a large scale, diversify on a small scale, and just what you don't want to have happen is have a huge stand of similar trees, because if a disease or anything goes through, a bug goes through that stand, you can have a huge gap in your
You end up with
woodlot.
a big empty field.
And of course that allows often invasive species, and you're basically starting over trying to rebuild your woodlot.
Well, and it's not that we don't have a fair number of yellow birch on the property, but not in this area of the property.
That's right, and that's why it's critical to know your whole woodlot. Here, this is a relatively sparse item. Out further, we can go out there perhaps today. We have a stand there that's 40% yellow birch. So guess what? Out there, I can feel free to cut yellow birch, and
In favor of something else.
my option there is typically in favor of red maple. But again,
Or pine if you had them.
well, and we've done planting and so on out there, so you know, that's the other thing that you can do to help diversify, of course, is plant. But right now we're talking about cutting. Okay, so we're looking at a cluster here of white ash. So the other thing you want is to keep your trees as healthy as possible. That means you try and minimize the competition that they're experiencing, even amongst themselves. Again, if we get an emerald ash borer attack, the stronger these trees are, the more resistant they will be. So this tree right up in here,
This way a little.
okay, is touching crown with the tree over on the right. I think probably touching this one right here,
And one in the foreground.
and one over on the left. And so he's essentially in there, in a sense, competing with 4 other trees. And so I would cut him out, not as a high priority like freeing up a red oak or something like that, but when you have the time to really work on improving the quality and not just the diversity of your trees, this is one I would take out. Try and give the other trees roughly 4-foot spacing. That means they're free to grow for probably another 20 years without competition, and then from there you can do either a harvest or do more releasing of competition, whatever suits your...
Basically, for gardeners, it's like thinning out your carrots.
It's exactly like thinning out your carrots.
So you're thinning out your trees and leaving the best behind.
Yes, yes, it's important to pick your best.
So when we talk about Mr. Bendy, that was might have been a very first video. Michael's friend Mr. Bendy here. You'll see he's horizontal rather than vertical for the most part. But he does seem to be doing quite well, so Michael seems confident he's going to become a mature tree. I'm a little more dubious that that may not be achieved, however. Fingers crossed. Hang in there. So this is an area along the side of the road where no work has been done at this point. So what are we looking at here, Michael?
Well, we're right beside a white ash here, but surrounding like there's 5 fir and probably dead white birch.
There's a couple white
Another
birch.
white birch, a fir on the other side. Some
Gray birch, maybe?
yeah, stressed, I would say, at least, if not dead. Gray birch around, gray birch, fir, gray birch. Now there is a cedar right here.
So he's generally a desirable tree.
Well, he's a leave alone, not a great climate change tree, at least not by most predictions, but again, he's diversity, so we usually keep all the cedar that we have, even though other than fir, it's probably close, well, maybe red spruce. Anyhow, it's a toss-up what number 2 conifer is.
Now I see a smooth stem there. Is that a maple?
I would say that's probably a maple there.
Red maple. And come around to this side and there's even alders.
Yes. So what we would do in here is clear a section of this. Now when you're doing this, the general guideline is to create an opening that's 1/2 to twice the surrounding tree height. So in here,
So if you have a 30-foot tree, you want to leave 45 to 60 feet around them? Is that what you're saying?
no.
No. Oh,
You're-
1/2.
You're right about the 30 foot. That's
Okay.
probably 35 feet. So somewhere around 15 foot wide,
Okay.
up to twice the height, which would be up to 60 feet. Now personally, I think the 60 foot is too wide. I would go somewhere, well actually what I'd like to do in cases like this is maybe come in and do a thinning, come back in a couple of years and see what's going on the ground, and then come in if I'm not satisfied that we're getting successful regeneration, is go
a little heavier.
to like the 30-foot width if need be.
Okay. So you do it kind of in 2 stages,
Well,
which helps avoid things like Mr. Bendy.
my strategy.
You'll notice I keep reminding Michael
Well,
about
that's
Mr.
really
Bendy.
a different circumstance altogether, but it's better in my inexpert opinion to undercut than overcut.
Right. You can always come back and take out
That's
more.
right. You can always come back if you cut too wide a strip and you're starting to see fir and poplar and other early succession species, growing. Well, it's too late, right?
Yeah,
you've already done it at that point.
You've lost your chance. It's over.
Yes. Yes, you have.
So you're going to do this spot?
Actually, you were wrong because I have done a tiny bit.
Yeah, I
just
see one stump there.
Just a tiny bit.
Looks like one birch that you took out.
Well, and I did a little bit of thinning up in the fir, up in through there a bit.
I'll take your word for it.
Darn right you will.
So what are we looking at here, Michael?
Well, we're looking on the right-hand tree, a red maple, and the left is a balsam fir. You could come in and cut out the fir. On the other hand, the fir only goes up probably no more than about halfway up the red maple. So the crown of the red maple is essentially free. It's free to grow. It has no competition nearby at all. So,
He still doesn't look real healthy, though.
well, no, but I think he has been suppressed because I cut out a white birch here
Okay.
some time ago. So that was probably what was holding them back. But you're really accomplishing nothing because the fir is not taking sunlight away from the red maple. And I know people will sometimes talk about, well, it's taking moisture and nutrients out of the ground. From most of what I've read, that maybe in a serious drought it may be an issue, but I think in regular day-to-day, doing of things that it's just a can leave them alone.
So what we have here are two mature red spruce, relatively close together. You can see their branches are twining in among, and they are approximately 10 feet apart.
Just want to illustrate here that just because two trees are in close contact, in fact, in a sense, competing a bit with each other, if you look at the shot that Debbie took, the crowns of both of these trees are healthy, and two trees competing one against the other is generally considered acceptable. Most thinning requirements is that trees be released on 3 sides, not all 4, as the minimum requirement. So here, you know, nothing's being harmed. You just let them go and enjoy the shade.
So both trees should be able to thrive under these conditions.
Oh yeah. So we're here at the stump of a red spruce and a yellow birch. The two trees, as you can see, are growing extremely close together.
No, they're not now.
So I would come by and look and think, geez, which one should I cut, pick? The red spruce, the yellow birch?
Normally we'd like to keep both.
Yeah. So what I did is what I would recommend most people doing. When in doubt, just walk away. Don't do anything if you're not reasonably certain what has the best outcome. Unfortunately, our contractor doing the commercial thinning cut the red spruce and tore the yellow birch all to pieces.
And the process damaged the yellow birch.
Right. Unfortunately, he didn't just drive away, but it's what happens sometimes when you have people working on your woodlot.
Big equipment, yep. So this is an area that is basically just a friggin' mess. So Mr. Hickey, what would be your strategy here?
Yeah, well, you're correct. It is a mess. I'm not seeing at this point anything I would call a desirable species in here. But again, if we can get sunlight down on the floor, like if you look, there is no regeneration.
There's nothing green.
Right, it's pretty barren down in there. So if we cut some strips through this, and of course if we do find anything, red maple, yellow birch, which I'm pretty sure isn't in here, but
this is pretty much all fir and occasional white birch, I think. Yep.
Yeah. Personally, for me, I tend to leave the birch unless I'm really on a firewood hunt, and cut the fir and come back in a year or two and see what's going on and cut some more.
And just gradually open it up.
Yeah, we can stop and we'll look at a spot that I've been working on for a few years.
Okay, so Michael, I think this is a similar area to the one we just looked at, except you've been going through and cutting out a bunch of garbage.
Well, it's a bit better in that there are some
there's at least a
mature red spruce in here, and there's 1 or 2 red maple. But basically, yes, everything, all the devastation you see is where we were cutting out fir. Probably came in at least 3 times in here. And unfortunately, if you look at the forest floor, there isn't a lot happening. Which reminds me of what the stones say, you don't always get what you want. And
I see something I want.
well, that's the thing.
There's a little lady slipper there.
Yeah.
Which is a wild orchid. There used to be a lot on this property. There seem to be quite a bit scarcer than they used to be. But they are rather fussy about their environs. So anyway, that's a pink one. There's an odd pure white one too. Technically, they're moccasin flowers. We normally just call them the lady slippers. Mess, Mr. Hickey.
Mess.
So this is a spot right along the road. It was a tree Michael had commented on not too long ago when we were walking. It's a pine, but he's a little crowded. He's a little misshapen up there too, but... So, Mr. Hickey, what's the solution for this guy?
Okay, so here we have a red spruce.
So in this corner...
Probably, no, he's alive. Red spruce. Here's our white pine right here. And there's another red spruce. So the part of the woodlot we were just at, I cut out the fir and I left red spruce. Right? Here, the white pine is more important, a better climate change tree than the red spruce. So right now, these red spruce are the garbage tree.
Oh, I don't know about garbage, but
Well,
less desirable
less
trees
desirable.
in this situation.
Yes, and there's a bit of fir, which is really not competing at all. But yeah, in here,
And this guy, not looking terribly healthy anyway.
no, you can see the ants if you want a real close up there, going in and out.
The ants go marching one by one.
No, I think they're marching at least 6 by 6 in there.
So
maybe 100 by 100.
he's on his way out already.
So hope you enjoyed this video. It gets complicated in terms of you know, your decisions, because red spruce one time it's a keeper tree, and in another location it's a cut tree. But those are the kinds of decisions that if you're going to work in your woodlot, you have to be able to make. So it really takes a lot of time to get familiar with what's there, what you have lots of, what you need more of, and
Well, and deciding for your woodlot what trees is it you want to make priorities,
Yes.
versus which ones are perhaps less desirable. One thing, and I know it can sometimes be difficult to pick out an individual tree in a forest, but for your red oak and beech at least, the best time to identify those would be in the late fall or over the winter, because they tend to hang on their leaves after all the other ones have lost theirs.
Yep.
So we've discovered a number of them because of that. We're just wandering around saying, what the heck is that with all those brown leaves still on it? And have identified some additional oak saplings and some beech trees.
Yep. Well, thanks for joining us, and hope you'll share this with others who may be interested in this topic, and hope you'll join us again, and appreciate your support.
So subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff.
And stay safe.
Catch you next time.